What is going on with Jack Crusher? Shaw calls Starfleet and we get a reunion 30 years in the making. The changing threat deepens. And to top it off, a Vulcan gangsta? All this and more coming up on my spoiler review of Star Trek Picard, Episode 35, Imposters. Coming up now. Greetings, nerds. This is Will Polk, producer of the Senior Nerd Podcast, with our host, Sarah Belmont. Thank you for joining me today. As I mentioned at the outset, we'll be reviewing Star Trek Picard, Episode 35, Imposters. This episode was written by Cindy Appel and directed by Dan Luke. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't watched the episode, stop now and then watch it and then come back and watch my review. But if you don't care to be spoiled, then continue to watch. But in either case, please leave a comment while we're going through this. Also, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you're really enjoying this show or main shows that we do on the podcast. So with that, let's get into the story. So overall, I thought this was a really good story, really great start to the second half of the season. And when we first get to start this episode, we first start off with Jack Crusher on the bridge of the Titan. And Jack is in the having one of his visions, and in the process of having one of those visions, he kills the bridge crew. Now, a couple points here. One, this could be a flash ahead, or it could be just something that's going on in his head. But take note that he is wearing a Starfleet uniform, which comes into play later in the story. We then move to Riker and Picard and Seven and Shaw in Shaw's conference room. They're having a discussion about how the changelings were able to get onto the Titan. And Riker notes that generally the changelings only took the outward appearance of an individual, but clearly something was going on that now they are also able to evade the stepped up measures that Starfleet had undertaken as a result of the war, that being blood screenings and other protocols. And so Seven figures that out as well. During the conversation, Riker transfers the command back to Shaw. Shaw immediately turns to Seven with one in his first act and asks her if she wants to be reinstated or uninstated. And of course, Seven chooses to be reinstated as a first officer. And then Shaw, before he leaves the room, steps out and says, I'm going to give you guys the courtesy of getting your bullshit story together. That being how the crew of the Enterprise, Riker and Picard in particular, were able to commandeer the Titan under false pretenses. And I have to say, Todd Stashwood is killing it this season. He's definitely like the MVP guest star, like Anson Mount was in the second season of Star Trek Discovery. So we now move to the next part of the story where Beverly and the Titan's doctor are in the sick bay doing an autopsy on the changeling that was killed by Seven, when Seven figured out that this changeling was not Crash LaForge, from how Shaw had mentioned earlier that changelings can take the outward appearance, but details about a person's life and other things they don't always know, which comes into play later in this episode as well. So we see that here. Had a great funny moment with Crash LaForge when Beverly started doing the autopsy and seeing the blood coming out of the changeling with her retching, and makes it clear why she's in command and not in the sciences division. But as that all transpires, we do get word that Starfleet has arrived. Picard asks Seven to do a favor for him, which is we don't know at the time, but then we cut to a scene where Seven gives Jack a duffel bag, and in there has that uniform that I had noted earlier in the episode. As the Picard, Riker, and Shaw get in the turbo lift to greet whoever is coming from the beautiful shot of the Dunderstant class starship USS Intrepid. Riker leans over and is like, we've saved the galaxy more than a few times, and hopefully they'll remember that in reference to their punishment. And then Shaw, again, just blows him up and just like, look, oh yeah, it could do that. Or, you go from hero to zero really fast, especially when you have hot landed the Enterprise D on Veridian 3. Picard broke the Prime Directive by hooking up with a Baku. And then, of course, the whole time paradox from All Good Things, the series finale for the Next Generation, where they had the time with. And so it was a very, very funny moment. Yes, it was indeed a lot of fan service, but it was still a very funny moment. We then see who comes over via shuttlecraft from the USS Intrepid, which is, again, a very important story beat. And when the door opens, we see the look on Riker and Picard's face when they realize that it is Ro Laren. And we have not seen Ro Laren since season 7, Preemptive Strike, when she had betrayed Jean-Luc and the crew of the Enterprise and joining the Maquis, which the Maquis was a splinter group of Federation citizens who lived in the Cardassian demilitarized zone after the Bajoran-Cardassian War. So 7 is off doing her thing, and then we see Ro and Picard and Riker go to the conference room. They have a discussion about trying to figure out what's going on with Ro and why she's here, and she tells them that they are suspected of treason. And we get some exposition back and forth as far as filling in casual fans, non-fans, and even reminding longtime fans of what went down with 7 and her backstory as far as being court-martialed before coming on the Enterprise, becoming an integral part. In only 8 episodes that Michelle Forbes appeared as Ro in, but we heard about that, and then the writer, of course, has gotten over her leaving him on the shuttle at the end of Preemptive Strike. Picard is still clearly very pissed, and Riker leaves the room. Seven and Picard go back and forth. Ro, goes back and forth with Picard, and during that discussion, Ro notes that she wants to speak to Jack, and Picard, of course, continues to be very evasive about Jack, and they go round and round and round. You notice that her Bajorian earring, is no longer present, and that was a very critical point that Ro had back in the day with her service on the Enterprise. So Picard gets a message from Beverly that his medical results are done. And then we get this message that changelings can pass the blood test capabilities beyond superficial. Trust no one. And Beverly figures that out whenever she is looking at the internal organs of that changeling. And it finally did, after pushing, did revert back to its gelatinous state, which normally that is how, whenever a changeling does die, that's typically what happens. It goes back to the gelatinous state. And then a lot of times it just will go into dust or dirt. I agree with DS9, but this message really ties back into some of the things we saw at the beginning of the season. So, Picard and Ro end up in the holodeck, and they have a real heart-to-heart moment for why it really what went down between their relationship. They were mentor-mentee. Picard was clearly very, very wounded by Ro's betrayal, and in the process of that discussion, I really have to say that I really think it reminded me a lot of some of the things with Sisko and Eddington when they had their discussions on DS9 as far as when Eddington betrayed Starfleet and went to go join the Maquis, and Ro had some of the similar sentiments as far as trusting institutions and how the Federation is not all great. Ever she was explaining herself to Picard, but ultimately again we get back to the earring. They do talk. Picard points out about the earring, and ultimately they do. In their heart-to-heart, and again, getting back to how changelings can't understand they don't know the intimate details of the person they've taken over. In the process of Picard and Ro having their heart-to-heart discussion, they both realized that though they were who they say they were. And so that was a really, really big point. But the other big thing that we learned here is that Starfleet has been compromised up to its highest levels all throughout. I mean, we've seen this happen before in Star Trek, where Starfleet's been compromised by the changelings. When we think about DS9, whenever they were for them, people and led to all kinds of chaos with the and then also here we learned that Ro had learned something was possibly going to go down on Federation on Frontier Day, and also that her contacts have not been able to get in touch with them. And she, we learned that she has a couple of those assets, 2 assets. And, immediately at that point when we had those 2 assets, definitely realized that it was Worf and Rafi who were working on her behalf on Metalis to find out what's going on. So they have a final moment there. Ro goes back to prepares to go back to the Intrepid. As she's leaving, she gives Picard, she hands Picard something. We later learn that is a Bajoran earring, and I don't know if this is a prop issue or not, but when you look at the earring closely, it's not the one that she actually wore in Next Generation, but it looks like it's closer to Kira Neresa's earring. So I don't know if that is anything about maybe Major Colonel Kira showing up, or we'll see. But that was just a little nit that I noticed there. But Ro goes back to the Intrepid on the shuttle. Whenever she is transported back, realize that the 2 security officers change. The changelings, they set a bomb on the ship, and Ro has to make the ultimate sacrifice, of course, to save the Titan from the changeling threat. And I have mixed feelings, quite frankly, about this. I mean, it was a very touching scene, and I have to say, whenever she and Picard did have that final moment over the comms about figuring out each other and finally understanding one another and where they were coming from, it was a very moving moment, I have to say. I did get a lump in my throat, especially when the shuttle slammed into the nacelle. But my nip about it, on the other hand, is a character we haven't seen in 30 years, and then they kill them off. And narratively, I understand why they did it, but at the same time, it was kind of a hard point to watch as well. So just a little nit there. But from that situation, we get an amazing shot of the Intrepid rising up over the Titan, a la the Reliant and the Enterprise and the Wrath of Khan, and it's a beautiful, beautiful shot. And then we see the Titan ready to get attacked by the Intrepid. Shaw's on the bridge, has a moment of indecision as far as what to do. Picard and Riker are both like, take him out. Let's get out of here. Shaw is still him and hawing about it, but then when Ro makes that ultimate sacrifice, Riker's like, look, use your eyes, Captain, see what's going on here. And Shaw finally does get it and takes the ship to warp whenever it was able to escape from the Intrepid. So we end with Picard and Riker learning what was on the earring, and Picard didn't understand it, but Riker, like earlier in the season when Beverly sent Picard a message, Riker again figures out what's going on and realizes that it was a data chip in the earring. They load it up, and we see all the infiltration from the that Ro was doing in her investigation, and really gets to the core of like what Beverly said, trust no one, and also how all this, the A story that is going on with our crew on the Titan ties into the B story with Raffi and Worf back on Metalis Prime. They were on the Raffi's ship, and of course having their sparring sessions, which the sparring sessions were really going to come in hand. We'll really pick up here in a moment, but during that time, they realized that Sneed had an accomplice still on Metalis Prime, and they had to go back in District 6 to find that accomplice. And it turns out we learned that it's someone named Kryn. But a nice little Easter egg moment here. Whenever they discovered that it was Kryn, we see three, and then there's another screen of another character, three other people. Morn of Loria, which Morn, all fans know, is from Deep Space Nine. He's always a fixture at Quark's bar. Also, we see Brunt of the FCA, Jeffrey Combs' character from Deep Space Nine as well, who was a thorn in Quark's side. And then Thadian O'Connor, who was in the second season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. We see that he is on this list, but he was also recently in Star Trek Prodigy, and he was a character who was a little lovable rogue. And a little interesting trivia note: Billy Campbell, who plays that character, was almost cast as Riker, but so we get that nice little moment there. But we go to District 6, and the reason why they needed to get Kryn is they needed to break into Daystrom Station, and Kryn has the abilities of being able to. His forte is to get into high security places. So Worf and Raffi go in, become the alphas of District 6. They do later encounter Kryn, and we get a great performance by the gangsta Vulcan. Kirk Acevedo plays Kryn masterfully, and he is like, some actors are just perfect for certain parts, and he nails it here. He has the coolness that he would brings to this character, but also the logic of being the OG of a gangsta. So really enjoyed Kryn. He figures out that Raffi, he saw the holo emitter and figured out that Raffi was indeed a hologram. So he was like, "Nah, Worf, you may think you got me, dog, but I got you." And so, of course, Raffi was up in the upper parts of the district. Kryn, people find her, get down to the base there, and then they have Kryn basically has Worf and Raffi fight to the death, and they took wagers on it. Raffi, the fight that they had before, and all the philosophical differences between Worf and Raffi come into play here, but Raffi's able to best Worf, and of course, Worf before the fight has the classic Klingon line, "Today is a good day to die, Raffi Letta," and but when Worf does get mortally injured, and he supposedly dies there, but then of course, we all know Worf was not going to go out that way. They're not going to do it like that. So of course he does come back. They overtake Kryn. Great funny moments there. He's like, "I'm bleeding out here. Give me the stuff I need to know now." Kryn's like, "That is logical," and shares the information about Daystrom Station. Then we end the show with the Worf and Raffi story, with going back to Riker and Titan on the Picard, as they have just discovered the things that was on the Bajoran earring that Ro gave to Picard. Learn that it was indeed get an incoming transmission, and the two stories are beautifully linked together now. Ro's two assets, meaning Worf and Raffi, now we get a reunion with Picard and Riker, which will lead us to the next part of the story in the second half of this season. So great moments there. Where all the principal characters are starting to come online. The only person we haven't seen yet, as far as the principal characters to this point, is Geordi LaForge. But we'll now move to the last part of what I was going to cover today, and that's Jack Crusher and what the heck is going on with him. So we see these red eyes. There's been a lot of theories about what this is about, but a couple quick notes about his story. He's been hearing the voices, having these visions of and the voices in the back of the head. In this episode, it's very clear that it's Beverly Crusher who is telling him to find me, connect us, hear me. We have a moment where he is with the transporter chief, and he hears these voices again. And I'm get into this in my theory section here in a second. But one of the things that was very interesting was whenever the vision got triggered, it was the word "hear me," and that's when things sort of went where Jack executed that guy, and then he got snapped back out of it and realized that he was back. But as we see, Seven tells Jack to wear a Starfleet uniform because he it was going to help blend him in with the rest of the crew, because they know Vadic is after him, and during the interrogation with Picard, Ro also made a point that she was wanting to know what is up with Jack Crusher, and that was a big part of her investigation into what was going on with the Titan. So we get that moment, and then as we get later in the story, as Ro leaves the Titan, we get the situation with Jack Crusher, and we see the changelings leave, change over. And then we get Rose shuttle back to the Titan. They change, and then we get two more changelings, and then Jack sees what's going on, gets into activation mode. This time he willingly did it. For whatever reason, he could recognize the changelings. We'll get to that here in a second with the theories. But he takes out the four changelings, and then we end with him and Beverly at the end of the episode, and she wants to know what's going on with him and how did he figure out that these were changelings, and he was like, I don't know, I'm not doing well. And she's like, look, I could tell when you're not doing well, you're not sleeping, your eyes roll back, there's just a bunch of things, things that a mother would know about their child. And so we have to wonder what's going on there with Jack, and the episode ends with him says, I don't know what's going on, but he says, I don't either. And he just ends it with the episode saying that I think there's something wrong with me. And then we fade to black. So that was the this episode in a nutshell. Many things going on here. It's a great kickoff to the start of the second half of the season. Before we close out, I did want to go back to the what is going on with Jack and the eyes, and there's been a lot of theories going on. Of course, last week I theorized it was possibly the Red Angel. I definitely think that's off the table now. It really gets into, I think, one of three. There's been the theory that because of the red eyes, it could be the Pirates from Deep Space Nine, which of course now we got Ro coming back, and we see Kira's ring and earring and other things. There's some parts that maybe it could be the Pirates, and maybe he was on Bajor and got and down to the fire caves and somehow unleashed them again. And he was corrupted, because we do know that Jack and Beverly were going on a lot of missions where they were doing medical rescue and those types of things. Hadn't been any dialogue that I could think of that would put on Bajor, but that's a possibility. That theory does have some validity to it, and the behavior that he is reminiscent of someone who has been possessed by the Pirates. We saw that with Jake Sisko, and of course, most famously, Gul Dukat. But One other thing with another theory is that, with how the season has unfolded, is that Jack is a changeling, and and things that have happened throughout the season tie to that. For example, we now learn that changelings have evolved to the place where they can replicate, impersonate someone to the place where they can evade blood screenings because they can even do internal organs. So there's that. There's the point that at the very beginning of the season, on Beverly's ship, we had Picard's log entries being played. Now, we learned from Shaw that it's easy to slip up changelings, with personal details. So the theory that support this, so hearing Picard's log entries supports that theory that maybe Jack is indeed a changeling, because he, those log entries, personal log entries, were being played. So maybe he was learning, he had somewhere along the line, the original Jack Crusher got replaced, and the changeling now is one in his spot. And he was trying to learn as much about Picard as possible so that he could pass any type of questioning and come across as the real deal, not only with Picard, but also with Beverly as well. And we've seen this in Star Trek before, when Julian Bashir was taken by the Dominion and replaced on DS9 for months. And they were none the wiser that a changeling was within the principal crew of DS9. So that was, so that's definitely a place where it could go. And maybe Jack is a sleeper agent, because whenever he did encounter those 4 changelings, they were trying to get him to come back. So, but it could be a sleeper agent, and also with that, he could be a sleeper agent for the changelings, because those 3 words. Maybe he was conditioned to hear me, connect me, hear us. With Beverly's words, maybe they use Beverly as the voice in his head to help trick, be the one that since she is his mother, use those nurturing things to maybe use that to make trigger words. The other theory I had was maybe he's not a changeling. Maybe he's Section 31, and he's the agent for Section 31. And that was the conditioning maybe they did to have him be their changeling detector. As we know, Starfleet Intelligence, there's that agency, and then Section 31 is like the next level as far as Starfleet Intelligence. And Rogue and Worf seem to be maybe Section 31 or maybe a deep part of Starfleet Intelligence, but they, maybe that was why Rogue wanted him back, to try to get him to learn, figure out what he did. So, that's part of it. Also, Section 31 has had dealings with the changeling before. In DS9, they were the ones who put the virus into Odo that went back and poisoned the Great Link. So it could be that that was the things that Section 31 is doing here as well. And the last theory I thought was maybe Jack was augment. That was with the way he was fighting and those types of things. Maybe he has some augment as well. But those were the things that I was out there for Jack. Let me know what your thoughts are as far as who do you think Jack Crusher is. As far as other things, as far as theories, I think maybe Moriarty is probably going to be the AI there at Daystrom Station. And then we still have Lore out there, and I would love to hear your thoughts on what's going on with how Lore is going to show up. But closing thoughts, this was a great start to the second act of the season. Can't wait to see what they do and what twists and turns they take us on next. So with that, be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube. Also like and comment on this video. You can also follow us wherever you get your podcasts by going to www.scenernerdpodcast.com. Live long and prosper.